to this now in the organisation My Vote Counts, writing to President Cyril Ramaphosa, asking him to refuse to sign into law changes to the Electoral Matters Amendment Bill. The group says that the changes, which have agreed to by both houses of Parliament, are unconstitutional because it will give the President the power to change the thresholds or when parties have to declare donations that they've received. Joel Bregman is a senior researcher at My Vote Counts. Joel, good afternoon to you and thank you for your time. Why do you believe these changes in this bill are wrong?
Hi, thank you for having me. So, when this bill was devised, there was a necessary need for various pieces of legislation to change to come into line with the amended Electoral Act. One of these is the Political Party Funding Act. What this bill is proposing, there are two elements which we think are very problematic and unconstitutional. The first is that it expands the President's powers, as you said, to determine the limits. It's not just the reporting threshold, which at the moment is 100,000 rand. It's also the annual upper limit of what a party can receive from a single donor. The President now will have greater powers to take other matters into consideration when he devises this. In addition to that, the way that the bill has been devised is that if it's signed in its current form, there will be no limits for a certain time unless they are simultaneously proclaimed by the President, which is obviously a huge issue. It could create a lacuna in the law. It could create a period where parties can take whatever money they want and don't have to tell us.
Okay, so in other words, a company that wants to sell, I don't know, alcohol or tobacco or electricity or whatever it is, could give a political party 5 billion rand, make sure that political party wins the election and no one would ever have to know.
Essentially, if this comes to be in its current form, and there's a window period of lawlessness, essentially, where no disclosures will need to happen and there will be no upper limit, we sincerely hope this won't happen, but the door is open for it if it's passed in its current form. There are other legal provisions and there are ways, we've threatened to go to court around this if that does happen, though. So there are still ways to stop it, we believe.
Okay, I'm going to come back to the court in just a moment, but as I understand it, this bill, the idea was to make sure that independent candidates were treated in the same way as political parties. The whole point of the Electoral Matters Amendment Bill was to include independent candidates with political parties, because that's the big change in this election. So should funding have been part of this at all?
So from the outset, we said no. There was a very necessary requirement, as you have mentioned. But most of the laws, so this bill affected 5 different pieces of legislation. The majority of the amendments across all those different laws was literally the insertion of the word independent candidate or independent representative alongside political party so that they have some parity in our system. But these efforts, which we see as like incredibly opportunistic, to change our funding formulas, to expand the President's powers and to change how the way that our limits works, it's not acceptable. It should never have been included in this amendment bill.
If a bill is passed into law in this form, you would go to court, right? The clock is ticking. There's an election. I think you know the date. It's the 29th of May. What happens if the bill isn't actually law because of court cases for the election?
So what there are various ways to approach this, but we would likely seek an urgent interdict to put this on ice, essentially. I'm not sure what happens. The law has to be in effect by the 29th of May. That's a certainty. But we hope that the President will reconsider this, will send it back to Parliament, and we won't actually have to come to that eventuality.
Joel Bregman, thank you. Senior researcher at My Vote Counts. I do appreciate the time.